It usually takes a
All
little
right.
bit, so we're just gonna keep
About a
it.
second or two.
Yeah, we're just gonna reload the page. Just make sure everything's going. Mm, let's see. I don't see anything yet. Oh, it says we're live.
Yeah, my thing
Okay.
says
Yeah.
live.
Yeah, we're live. Okay.
All right. Hello, good evening, and salutations, everyone. I'm Jerry here with BatYard Productions, and once more, we're here with a special interview with uh, Blue Sentai Productions, here to kind of give us a wonderful guide on claymation and his adventure through it. And as always, tonight I have my special co-host with me, Josh,
Hi. How's everyone doing? It's
and
good to be
then
here.
Mr. Blue Sentai Productions. If you want to introduce yourself, say a little bit about what you do, we can get started.
Sure. Without further ado, I'm Francisco H. Gonzalez, and I am in charge of Blue Sentai Productions as the animator and director, voice actor, set builder, puppet constructor. Well, I don't want to have all night to get into that, but still, I pretty much make stop motion science fiction comedy shorts, and it's a pleasure for you guys to have me on the show.
Yeah, no, the pleasure's all ours. Thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it. We've been admiring your stuff for a little bit now. I gotta say, like, I love your Ray Harryhausen Rhodosaurus tribute that you made. It looks like you really said like a couple months ago. So I was just gonna ask you, is Ray Harryhausen like one of your inspirations for stop motion, or like do you have other like artists that inspire you?
No, it actually was the person that inspired him that got me going. Willis O'Brien, who worked on King
Oh,
Kong,
cool.
and
Yeah.
and and someone that I consider to be a huge hero of mine, Marcel Delgado, who Willis O'Brien hired. He actually pioneered the whole concept of making a stop motion puppet using metal armatures and the foam latex and everything. So those two, I think, really were my inspirations
Oh, wow.
in getting into the field.
Yeah, I have to check out Marcel Delgado. That's the first time I heard that name. That's cool.
Very unsung.
Yeah.
And mind you,
Hmm.
there were no Academy Awards for special effects,
Mhm.
in the 1930s. So he was never going to get recognized or credited for his work that he did. And Willis O'Brien would try and, say this guy did all this stuff, and the Hollywood brass at the time was all about the monster.
Right.
That's the star of the movie, not
Yeah.
not the guys that made it.
Right.
But it's still, his drive, his artistry, that I think was a huge inspiration to me. Ray Harryhausen was more of a pleasure to watch
Mhm.
Mhm.
over the years, but he's I've studied a lot of his work just to try and get a feel for my animation as well. So more so recently, I've been more into Ray than the other ones I mentioned.
Gotcha. Do you have a favorite stop motion film or like scene that kind of pops into your head that like, oh, that's the thing that got me into it?
Probably 1933 King Kong.
Hmm.
I think, yeah, the airplanes attacking him on the Empire State Building, the way he emotes angry, ferocious beast to almost a remorse. As you see him get shot up, and he find out he really did love the girl he was trying to kidnap.
Oh
It
yeah,
wasn't just him being some creep. It's like I think that
Now,
stop motion really. I think so many animators take inspiration from the work in that film.
oh, 100%.
now you
But you could
mentioned the
say the same.
1933 King Kong. Have you seen the Tom Sawyer's claymation movie? I'm
Oh
sorry.
yes, yep. That that probably is a claymation. I would call that a masterpiece of claymation animation, being that it probably was 100% all clay. I don't think they were doing anything technical like you see today, where it might be a hybrid of claymation, but it's phenomenal to look at. I think it took 3 years to make. Too.
Oh, wow. I didn't
Mhm.
realize it was
Oh,
that
wow.
long. I remember listening to something behind the scenes of that movie. We discussed it on the podcast previously of that film, and yeah, they're talking about like literally everything was made out of clay. So I wanted to get into your productions. Like, how much of your productions is made out of clay? Is it like kind of like 50-50? I noticed like you know you have your backgrounds too. So like if you want to get into your process and how much of it, like what your materials are.
Well, I could bring a brief little demonstration
Oh,
right here
awesome.
with one of my characters here.
That's great.
Trying to angle him because, yeah, this is Hayata Tsuburaya, a reference to two things from Ultraman. And the body is all sculpted plasticine on a wire armature that's coated in tinfoil, and then I add the clay on. But the head is actually polymer that I baked and put in an oven because with the
Oh,
skin
wow.
tone, uh, moving my fingers around and then moving onto this, if it was regular unhardened plasticine, the colors would start to smear.
Right.
So with a baked head, then I can clean it up a little bit easier, and then it's also easier to remove and plop on mouthpieces.
Oh, that yeah. I was going to ask you if you had different mouthpieces and eyepieces, you know, that you switch on and off. So yeah, that's amazing.
Well,
That's nice.
and that probably would disqualify me from being entirely claymation because those guys, I think, were actually sculpting the mouth movements with Will Benton Studios. I believe they did that a lot there,
Yeah.
where they didn't do too much replacement animation
Mhm.
until later. So yeah, the head's pretty much static, but just the mouth and the pupils too. About to have a scary scene here.
That's cool.
You know, I uh, yeah, take off the pupil, move it around, make them look crazy. But yeah, so
Oh,
the eyebrows too, I can move those up and down if you could see. So that's plasticine clay, unhardened. So those are and they still, like I said, they smear, but I can clean it off easily. Takes less than 5 minutes. Rubbing alcohol, boom, bang, boom, clean as a
right.
whistle. So, and it's all just
Mhm.
because of, like I said, the colors that I use, that I don't want them meshing too much with the skin. I did used to just do regular clay
Mhm.
instead of baking it, and I got rid of those videos and stuff because they just looked horrible. So I was like, no, I got to bake the head and then go ahead and do replacement with the eyes and mouth pieces.
So So prior to you baking the head, like the blue from the suit would kind of like smear into the color of the face kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
So I
I can
mean,
see
you could still clean the clay that's not baked, but for the most part, that takes longer than just having a baked head already.
right.
Out of
Mhm.
polymer clay. So
So like with your
to,
first stop motion videos, like what was your first stop motion film or like short that you made if you could, go back?
well, there were a lot of tests, just a lot of me taking random characters and stuff. I actually had something very ambitious, and I actually have the puppet here. I originally wanted to make something of, I don't know why this is not coming in the right angle. It was going to be set in Mexico in the 700s AD, and it was going to be about a demon
Oh,
meeting
wow.
a nasty,
Oh.
nasty, awful young man with horrible ambitions. And so the demon, in sort of like a Virgil Dante's Inferno fashion,
Mm,
is basically teaching this kid, you ain't know nothing, while encountering other monsters and demons. And so I was really had the desire to want to make this happen, but the scope of my production was a little too big at the
mhm,
time for my means. So I dropped about 2 grand on the puppets made by Ron Cole, if any of you are familiar with him. But
No.
he made these puppets for me out of silicone, and that was my plan, was to have this be my first short, but the animation was just wretched, purely horrible. And so I just did a lot of testing after that with random characters just to try and get better at, and then talked with actual animators who gave me tips and a little bit of advice of what I was doing to fix what I was doing wrong and stuff. And
Oh, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
oh well, long story short, this project went on the back burner, and I'm just doing a whole bunch of original ideas after that. So one day I'll revisit it.
Yeah, no, that
Puppets are there.
that puppet looks beautiful. So you said
It
it
does.
was made by Ron Coleman. You said his name was?
Ron Cole.
Oh, Cole. Okay. So
Yeah.
you said so what other works has he worked on?
He did well, the most recent thing he did, I believe, was called The Fifth Voyage of
Oh,
Sinbad,
that's cool.
and
I
it was
like
kind of
that.
meant to be like, it was a throwback
Yeah.
film to the Ray Harryhausen stuff,
Right.
and so he obviously did that with it. He kind of paid tribute to that a lot, while also doing some interesting stuff with computers and some of the new stop motion
Oh, that's
techniques
amazing.
to make it look more
Right.
realistic. But I think it was kind of direct to
Mhm.
video. I don't think it made a huge splash. But I don't know if you all are familiar with Faceless Neil, that came out back in 2000. I think it was
Yeah, I
2016.
don't think I've seen that.
I'm not
That
familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was also that was kind of like a Tim Burton sort of throwback,
Right.
and he worked on that. That's how I got to know about his work, and immediately was like, well, if he did a great job with those puppets, I'm contacting this guy to make some for me.
Yeah,
And so he
I was looking at the face of the puppet. It looked like, reminiscent of like, Corpse Bride and like Tim
Frank and Weenie.
yeah, Frankenweenie for sure. Yeah, it did have that kind of look.
But his expertise is with monsters. He did do I think they were kind of B films in the 80s.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
I think one I believe might be called Metamorphosis, the
Okay,
Alien
I think
Factor,
I
I
heard of
think
that
I
and
heard of
one.
that one.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
that he did all the special effects, and that's the highlight of the movie, are the special
Mm,
effects.
mhm.
It's kind of like your typical B
Right.
movie, where it's like, yeah, everything else is just not that interesting, but then when the monsters show up, you're like, oh wow.
Exactly. 100%.
Like, too bad the acting didn't match up with the special effects.
Yeah, it's a hard
So
marriage to have, like, the acting be on par with the special effects, especially with, like, stop motion, because usually stop motion is, like, the highest bar of the movie, and then you're like, "Oh, the acting or, like, the characters weren't that great." That's why, movies like King Kong and, Ray Harryhausen films, they kinda hit that happy medium where the story is really well told and and, animals and the monsters look great because, they're made by masters, so it's a fine line for sure.
well, the key thing with Ray especially was like, think of the famous skeleton sword fight in Jason and the
Oh,
Argonauts,
yeah.
or even like there was a stand-in that was there, an actual live action person that was interacting, and they would do kind of the same thing. I think they did it in Valley of Gwangi as well, where there was someone on a ladder with a little pole pretending to be the Guanjosaurus,
Oh,
the
right, when they're
Allosaurus.
lassoing the dinosaur, right? That scene?
It's so you could get a more realistic reaction,
Right.
realistic, when you're doing that.
Mhm.
Whereas like really cheap B movies that do stop motion, they don't seem to really grasp that. They're just like, I don't know, act like you're going, just run and act scared and stuff. And so no, yeah, the masters, they understood immediately.
Oh, 100%.
Something has to be interacting, much like you see in CGI. You'll have some kind of person in a green morph suit,
Right.
interacting, or motion
Mhm.
capture.
Mhm.
So it's like it was the earliest form of that, you could say.
Right. So, it seems like you got into stop motion fairly recently. than with you know, if you had those puppets, and then like it seems like you transitioned into more claymation. Can you talk about like kind of how you transitioned over to you know, more, you know, claymation kind of style?
Did we lose him?
I don't know. A
It
technical
was all demon
difficulty.
character was going to turn into a giant. He was going to turn into a giant snake. But you know, he was going to be this massive snake, and I wanted him. I was like, I'm not going to commission another puppet from Ron if I'm going to go poor doing that.
Yeah,
So
I
I
could.
thought
Yeah.
I'll make it myself, you know, and so I started with that, and it just started to snowball after that.
Mm.
I was like, just became anal about wanting to get it right.
Right.
And then that's when my buddy, Justin Kazmierzak, started to get more involved. And that's where we started to develop this idea. We had a whole laundry list of different ideas we could do. Some were period pieces, some were more straight sci-fi, horror, what have you. And he just said, "Well, you know what? Do what you can with the clay medium because we're not going to pay for to have puppets made for every pipe dream idea we have.
Mm.
You know, just go work with the claymation." And so that's how it basically I got my footing in it
Yeah.
and
I mean, that sounds like a
trying to basically
great.
get perfect.
Yeah. It sounds like a great way to like open the doors into it, because like you said, like you could make your own puppets, you know, and like claymation, you know, going back to, you know, like things like such as Gumby, or like even like the first Wallace and Gromit short, like they didn't look so like like pristine and you know, like smooth, like that you could tell they're made out of clay, and that's like part of the medium itself. So it's kind of nice, like you can make your own figures, and it doesn't have to be so streamlined and like so perfect, you know. It's kind of like part of the medium, like that's kind of what gives it its charm, is those like, you know, little quirks, and like, you know, the seams and everything with the clay, like you could tell that it's made out of the medium.
Well, but you know, I have been trying to get better at it as
Mm.
best I can too. And at the same time, I tell people I'm just doing it this way. You
Mm.
know, I when I
Mhm.
want to get this thing going seriously, I would want to, and we actually do have foam latex puppets being made of our main characters from Blue Sentai,
Oh
actually.
wow.
Yes, they will be here soon enough, probably within another week.
That's great.
So you're gonna continue the series with like transitioning the puppets? Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. And we're going to have a little explanation of why they look different too.
Mm. Oh,
Because
I like
the,
that.
the puppets look really good. And this is a space adventure
Mm.
series. So, you know, we're just going to explain they went through a supermassive black hole. And when they came out the other way, they look different.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
So
That's
That's a
they
cool
left the clay
idea.
world and entered the more foam latex world.
I like that. That's a cool way to transition, because it's like incorporated into the story itself too, which is great. You know,
Hey,
I
there's a
like that.
universe of endless possibilities.
Mm,
Anything is possible.
I
Now,
like
I had a quick question I wanted to throw in. Now, I know, obviously, you know, with claymation, the biggest thing is getting the models to, you know, in the right way you want them to look and staying the right way. Have you ever just had a problem where, you know, things just, I don't want to say crumbled, but just refused to work with the way you needed it to?
Well, I did, and I found a solution to it rather easily. And it really, to demonstrate, although it's not going to look as hair raising, um, hold on, as it once did. Here. Well, I don't know how well you
We could
guys
like
could
put them in
see.
front of you, then we'll be able to. Yeah, there we go. We can
Yeah,
see
there we go.
All right. So, you know, one thing that happens sometimes is with the wiring, you'll have the shoulders coated in the tinfoil, and that'll start to break. And so that creates exposed wire.
Hmm.
So, you know, as you're moving the arms around and stuff, it creates much more easy breakage where the clay is just moving around that wire until the wire basically is entirely visible. So, what
That's
I did, all I did was just put electrical tape over those parts of tinfoil. and
Right.
easily remove, add the clay, and it doesn't slide around as easily and stuff. But there are some animations where it's like you could see very easily, just a chop like that,
Right.
appearing. But obviously, look, I can easily repair it now.
Yeah, yeah. That's a beautiful part of clay.
Yeah, that's a very under the radar kind of fix.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I was just, I mean, there are some people who've mentioned doing similar things, but it was just an idea that I thought, well, electrical tape, it would obviously work around aluminum wire, which in and of itself is used for, electrical appliances.
Mm-hmm.
I just was kind of a natural, thought. Well, I was like, that this probably should work, and it has since. So that it's definitely one of those things that you just kind of hits you like a lightning bolt one day. Like, why didn't I think about this earlier? After all these hours of shooting footage and having to deal with that.
So I gotta ask you, with with your Blue Sentai series, like, one episode around like 15, 20 minutes long, like how long does that take to complete, like a big epic like that versus, one of your shorts that's like around a minute long?
Well, it has a lot to do with work, my
Mhm.
day job, and so that can be an 8 hour to 12 hour ordeal.
Right.
So that usually affects how much I can actually shoot. If I work an 8 hour day, I get home at 4:30, get ready to animate by 5:30. I could shoot till about 8:30
Oh,
and
wow.
Okay, that's
get
really
about
solid.
between 30 seconds to a minute done.
Mm.
And sometimes that's reverse shot kind of filming, copying and pasting, like, when dialogue sequences, but like big action set pieces actually take the longest. And I'll do that on a Sunday rather than trying to attempt to do that on a weeknight when
Right.
I'm already
Oh
tired.
yeah, that makes sense.
But the last one, the first episode I did, that was February, but see, I had something else I was working on at the same time. So I'd say February to July, but I probably, if I had just focused on it, I probably could have gotten it done by April. Because I had something else that someone, brought up, and I was working on that, in the meantime. And then I had a commission that unfortunately fell through. So, that kind of had me focused in three different directions.
Right. Yeah, and life happens, so like it's definitely
Mhm.
understandable. So you just mentioned commissions. Do you do that? Do you do commissions often, or like can you mention any projects you've done in the past or upcoming in the future?
Well, we have something, a buddy who is very adamant. He wants to do this. It's where it's kind of like a evil Rudolph story, kind of in the spirit of the Rankin Bass.
Yeah, I like that.
I'd watch it.
And I'm not really too much into doing blood and gore and stuff,
Mhm.
especially with something like Santa Claus. Everyone likes Santa. I don't want to kill Santa. It's like, Weird Al already did that with the Night Santa Went Crazy. It's like
Right, right.
we've already seen that, but he wants to do it. He's gonna pay me, but he's gonna let me kind of do my own spin on it as well.
I like that.
And so we're actually gonna not only do Rankin Bass, but we're gonna have also a throwback to sort of like 1920s rubber hose style animation.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So it'll be 2D claymation.
Hmm.
Well, I got a fine example of that right here. Uh,
There we go.
Sort of
Oh yeah, I
like,
remember. I saw the shark. Yeah, I seen that.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I finally jumped the shark.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
That
my
was
megalodon.
cool.
Nice.
But as you can see on the
Oh,
other
wow.
side, flat.
Yeah.
So I just set it against the set or green screen, and I like the effect of it. Obviously there have been some people who've done a great job with this style, like Craig Bartlett, who
Yeah,
made Hey Arnold.
I was just about to mention that. That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, he was the king of that. I mean, I think even Penny on Pee Wee's Playhouse, he
Yeah,
did
I think
that.
that's
You
where he
know,
got started. Was Claymation and Pee Wee's Playhouse and all that. I think he did some Sesame Street.
I think he did. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, so we're gonna do it in that style, and I kind of want to fashion Santa after Bluto from Popeye,
Oh, I
just as
like
like big,
that.
beefy, sort of like
Beefy
kind of
guy.
Santa, like a slave driving industrial age, kind of robber baron,
Yeah, for
you know,
sure.
with the workshop looking like a factory with black smokes billowing out of the smokestacks, and Rudolph's more like someone who's at his wits' end. He's been pushed too far, by this slave, by this robber baron, and so he's lashing out.
Oh,
He,
that's
he-
amazing.
so because I don't want to make it a gore fest. It's been done too many times now. Uh, I don't know if you guys have seen like the Lee Hardcastle claymation
Yes,
stuff.
I have.
I've seen a few.
Yeah.
He's the king of that, so it's like I don't think I could trump him.
Mhm. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, he has
So
those
it's
like TV spots on Adult Swim, right? Like those like
Yeah.
action
yeah, that's right. He did do I think some of the bumpers.
right. Yeah, that's what it's called. Yeah, those bumpers. Yeah, yeah, he's really great at especially like the claymation stuff. Like I'm a big fan of Evil Dead, so I think he did like uh
Yeah.
Cat's Evil Dead or something like that. And it was pretty funny. So I could understand like and like it's like you said, it's already been done before, so it's like isn't kind of an easy thing to do with like claymation. So it's kind of like almost more of a challenge to like not like be such a like a gore fest as well. So
Well, and the other thing too is I don't feel like cleaning up jelly off of my clay.
Right?
'Cause that's what he does, and I'm like, no thanks. That sounds messy.
Yeah,
I-
I can
Yeah.
understand. Unless you want to eat them like afterwards, yeah. I don't think
So I
that'll
have
taste
a,
so
a
great.
curveball I wanted to know. So say, this is a claymator, living or dead, that you could do your dream collaboration with, and money and budget was no issue, and they gave you leadway on the creative direction of the film. Who would you want to work with?
Undoubtedly Henry Selick,
Oh,
of the
that's a
Nightmare.
good one. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Phenomenal director. He can get a team of people to do production values that is beyond cinematic, in my opinion.
Mhm.
I mean, you look at Coraline, Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah.
It doesn't even look it doesn't look like stop motion half the time.
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
especially Coraline, it almost looks like
Coraline, like
3D.
all the movements are just so fluid. It's almost like you're watching a regular, movie without realizing, oh, this is, stop motion and claymation.
Yeah, it almost looks like it's like 3D animated.
well, and the key thing that what Henry Selick did, well, and this was what Will Vinton kind of pioneered as well, was just the all stop motion featurette,
Mhm.
where it's just all stop motion, and stop motion's not a special effect; it is just the medium. But
Right.
I guess I should dial that back a bit too, because it's like Nick Park did that with Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
Yeah.
as far as a feature length film and creating these actual sets with buildings where you have rooms with desks and miniature props and everything to create this organic scenery, Henry Selick's the king of that.
Mhm.
He I think what they do like at Leica is desperately trying to reverse engineer what he did on
Yeah.
Coraline.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that too. So like with your process like of creating, set building or animation, do you like have something playing in the background? Do you have music, or is it just kind of like, you're in your zone, you're making your work?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think it is pretty much that, just trying to be entirely, because especially like with sets, it's like a canvas that you're trying to portray the scenery, and and actually I'll make you guys laugh. Uh, I get a little bit in with Bob Ross. I channel Bob Ross a
Okay.
little bit.
I
Where
Okay.
like that.
like here's a beautiful mountain scenery, and here's a big old cave. There's gonna be a big scary monster inside, and let's give that monster a little friend here, a little friendly cave right here. But what I don't know if you guys are familiar with Bob Ross's mentor,
Oh,
a
he's like an Italian guy, right? something like.
No, an angry German
Oh, that's who
painter.
it is. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Bill Alexander, Bob Ross would be like, "Here's happy little clouds." Bill Alexander would be like, "Here are ferocious clouds,
Right,
and
right.
here's a thunderous mountain." And so I channel that sometimes, where I'm like,
Mm,
"Big mountains, tall skyscrapers,
right,
sprawling galaxies." I'll channel that as like a way to make myself laugh, but also as a way of kind of like really just getting that emotion onto the background
right.
rather just like, oh, here, blue sky, clouds, the end.
Yeah.
No, I
It's
totally
a good
get that.
balance. Yeah, that's a good balance too, because like you want that peace and serenity that Bob Ross has, and then it's good to like have those big epic, visions as well. Like they're kind of like not the clash, but like the contrast each other. You know.
It's
Well, I
all a
just
part
think
of what
I
gets you
think
through
it
the
could be kind of
process.
fun,
Mhm.
sometimes it amuses myself. It waited for me to amuse myself, where it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. But it also because it could get very banal sometimes.
Mm.
When you're just sitting there and you're just sculpting, it's like you can get easily annoyed. I mean, with how long it's taking. So if you can just kind of have fun with it, helps the process a little better. But animating, I'm acting. I'm basically acting, and so there are times I even have to like stop and think, okay, how am I gonna move? Like even right now as I'm talking, like with my hands moving in the interview, I'll do stuff like that,
Mm.
watch myself in the mirror, and then try to transpose that onto what I'm animating.
Do you ever
And
like
so
film yourself like as a reference, or is it just on the fly, like as you're moving, like real time?
oftentimes I'll watch clips from movies.
Mm.
So a
Mhm.
lot of my favorite movies and stuff, I'll just kind of watch a clip. I'll look it up on YouTube really quick, and then it'll just stay right in my brain. But then I'll watch like my body as I'm acting it out, or I'll look in the mirror, and that. I mean, I'm not gonna try and act like I do expertly phenomenal work, but it's one thing that's helped me.
Yeah, it's good to have a reference, and if you want a specific movement, you're right there, so you could almost like puppeteer yourself in a way.
Well, and on top of that, I'm going to voice the character, so it's
Mm,
like I want to try and match the emotion of the physical along with the vocal.
right. Do you?
So, I did do it Japanese style, where I'm basically animating and then I dub over
Oh, I see.
when it should be the other way around. And for anyone listening, do your voice acting first, then animate.
Do you
I
do you do all your voices, or do you have like other actors, or is it?
Justin, who helped me with this, is the voice of the leader of Blue Sentai, the
Mm,
corporate patron, a fellow by the name of Hagron, who is basically a no nonsense but calm individual. And it's funny because, well, I don't have Hagron with me, but I have Zance here. Uh, Still having a little trouble. The
oh,
the
there you
alien character, who's basically Hagron's best warrior,
go. Mm.
and I voice Zance, and Zance is a very loud, very obnoxious, shoot first, ask questions later kind of guy. And Hagron is a lot more austere and more serious, and that's how my friend Justin can be. And we joke, we said we crafted these characters just like us, how we act.
That's so fun, yeah.
And in a lot of ways, even like Hayata here too, kind of is sort of like another face of my friend Justin, but I voice Hayata,
Mm,
and I actually just do my regular voice when
yeah.
I'm doing, it's sort of like he's the only sane voice in the whole series.
Yeah. Yeah, he's like the straight man of everything crazy going
Yeah,
on.
He's the
and,
he's the no
our
nonsense straight arrow cop.
but he's stuck with an alien that basically is just like, oh look, there's the largest black hole in the galaxy. Let's go and bounce off
Right.
its event horizon.
Yeah, I love how like you stretch your characters too in clay, like your clay animations. Their eyeballs bulge out of their head, and like their tongues are swinging around. Like I love all that like really abstract animation that you really do. And it really
Yeah,
sells the scene.
No, that's I mean, I love old cartoons,
Mhm.
you know, from before the 50s. I mean, even though some of them look like they're pure acid dreams, they're just there's a lot you could take from it, you know.
Oh,
Mhm.
Look at Cuphead nowadays.
100%.
Yeah.
You know, all the people who love that show, it's like because yeah, it's to have like the eyes literally, you know, popping out and turning into mouths or you know, the characters going absolutely well, and Ren and Stimpy too was another
Yeah,
great
that's true.
Yeah.
example. Well, that was probably more of a Looney Tunes throwback than a
Mhm.
20s throwback, but
Right.
still, you know, you had some wild and crazy stuff, and I thought, you know, a lot of animation today just doesn't quite go there as much. I don't know why, but I just
Yeah.
thought, well,
I
I someone needs to bring it back.
I think a
It might as
lot of
well
the
be this.
modern. Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna agree with you. I think, especially, I watch old and modern cartoons, and in my opinion, I think modern animators, while yes, each has their unique style for what they want, everything still follows the same, visual pattern, colors, kind of background hues. Because if you look at the design for characters, they all have the same exact, head shape, mouth, and just almost the same base design, but plus and minus a couple of tweaks.
It's the South Park syndrome. I'm kind of serious. I think South Park had a major effect on animation.
Mm.
You know,
Mhm.
as innovative and daring as the early seasons of the show were, I think it had a huge impact on the industry, where people were kind of met the Pee Wee word of the day, reverse engineer.
Right.
You know, I think they were trying to reverse engineer that style. You know, and Family Guy's resurgence in popularity too. You know, Family Guy characters all have the
Yeah.
same round eyes, the same kind of protruding lip, and the way their mouths are not very expressive. It's more because it's all about what they're saying. They're
Right.
being controversial. When you try to do that with children's animation, it just doesn't work because they're not pushing that envelope. You know, where adult animation can get away with that. You know, but so with kids, you kind of have to be more wild. You have to be more expressive if you want to keep their attention, and also make dad happy when he's forced to sit down and watch the show with the kid.
Yeah. That's a
You
very
know,
fair point.
Yeah, you could even say that, I guess, like, even with The Simpsons, like, they had their character designs, but even sometimes they stretch the envelope, especially, like, early seasons of The Simpsons, like Treehouse of Horror, they got really creative, but, like, I do know what you mean in that
I
sense.
think of Bart versus Thanksgiving though, when Bart had that nightmare where everybody was like, "It's all your fault."
Oh,
Oh
yeah!
yeah.
Yeah, that's a classic.
It was almost like Edvard Munch's The Scream, where
Mhm.
everybody had like stretched out faces and big
Yeah, they
expressions.
they did do, like, fun animation stuff like that, but once they did, it was, like, always, serve the scene, it wasn't like, like, every day, like, Bart's, like, eyes would bulge out of his head, if, Milhouse ran over his mailbox or something.
But you know, it was kind of like the daydream scene. I was just thinking of a scene where I think Bart was trying to pass an aptitude test or something, and he had a nightmare where like he was on a train or something, and it was all very surreal and weird and
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
So I think it was always when it was like a dream
Yeah,
when the
exactly.
Simpsons would kind of do that.
Yeah, 100%, like a dream sequence or, like, Treehouse of Horror where they could, like, push the envelope a little bit.
It's definitely the separation between the reality and more like this is just us having fun, you know,
Mhm.
for the
Yeah.
sake of trying something. But you know that was the thing. I just feel like you know, yeah, with adult animation, you can clearly not have to worry about certain expressions as much, you know. But there have been some examples though where they do, you know, almost get on that level, and you know, you can even make the argument that Ren and Stimpy, in a lot of ways, was kind of like a show for adults that was doing that,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
But still, it's like, yeah, I think the blandness of well, I shouldn't say blandness, but just the
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 copy and paste of it.
the monochromatic.
Yeah, I like that word.
Emotional range of characters.
Mm,
But well, no, copy and paste is good though too. Yeah, because it is literally like they're talking like this pretty much the whole time and just blinking their eyes constantly.
right.
You know, because that's one of the cheap animation tricks is you blink an eye so then you can move the eye around without having transitional drawings
Oh, that's a
or
good.
shots.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Now that you mentioned that, I have noticed that. And I never thought about it. I'm like, that's so weird. This person's blinking like 40 times in a
Mm,
minute.
No, I mean, yeah. Next time you see, hey Lois, you remember that time I told you that story about Quagmire? It's like, yeah, they do a lot of stuff like that. Funny thing about, I thought about the other day. None of my characters ever blink. All my characters don't hardly ever blink. Because I never think to do it. But some animators would say, "Oh, don't worry about it. No one's paying attention." But I'm like, I don't do that. So it's like, oh, okay, well. I here I am moving the eye one frame at a time.
oh yeah, and I think it has to do with like tone too of the show. Like if it like is kind of like more set in the real world, like you don't want to go so zany, but like I don't know, in the world of Looney Tunes or something like where people like really stretch their bodies and like really impact things. You really
Mhm.
want to have all those expressions.
Exuberant expressions.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Well, and that's what I at least want to try and do with my work, for the most part. But well, that's the one thing with why I would probably say staying with claymation would probably be an option, for the future, or at least doing like a hybrid of it, where
Right.
we make like clay replicas of the actual latex puppets, so that we can then do those kind of. Well, actually, they did that a lot. I don't know if you guys ever saw Celebrity Deathmatch.
I have, yeah.
I think I might have caught an episode or two here and there.
That might be all you need, really.
Yeah,
That
it's kind
show
of
is a
the same
fever
formula.
dream.
It got repetitive very quick. There's only so far you could go with having people kill each other in a ring for vanity reasons, but reasons regarding vanity. But they would do that because they had their puppets made of foam latex, so they would create clay replicas to then do like stretch effects
Oh, I
and
didn't
stuff.
know
Mm.
that. Okay.
Actually, I do remember specifically there was one. It was Jim Carrey versus Mariah Carey.
Mm.
Don't
Mhm.
ask me why they got in a fight. It might just be a name pun thing.
Yeah, I think that was all they had. Yeah.
A- And Mariah punches Jim's face, and they did a replacement where the face got punched in,
Mm.
but then he reaches in and stretches out his face, and they did that with clay. So that's where it can be an option for me still,
Yeah,
to
that's
do stuff
cool.
like that.
It's like the best of both mediums. That is cool to interchange like that.
So, I mean, and it's funny because actually, we brought up Leica earlier, and I don't think they're even trying to be cartoonish in anything that they're
No,
doing.
not really. I mean, like they are like still hitting that like dreamlike state. I think the last thing I saw was Kubo, which like
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
Kubo and
liked
the
it.
two strings.
Yeah, I liked how it was animated. The story wasn't like my favorite, but like
Yeah, the animation for that I definitely thought was I wouldn't say
yeah,
breathtaking, but for the tone that they used with the landscapes is what
Mhm.
made it
Yeah, the tone
go
was
to that
really well.
level for me.
Mhm.
yeah. I think I agree with that too. The story, yeah, I kind of feel like I don't know if you guys would agree, but I think Leica sometimes is telling the same story.
Mm.
Yeah.
Every movie they're doing,
Yeah,
it's an outsider
right.
who
Like
doesn't
Box
fit in.
Trolls, yeah, was kind of like
Kind
a
of that
similar.
misfit outcast
Mhm.
earning their place,
And then
which
there's some
isn't, it's not
scary threat.
bad, but once
Right.
you see it, like 2 or 3 times, you've had your fill of it.
Like I think Paranorman was probably their best one that they did of that vein,
Yeah,
but
yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. I did like that one. It was more creative. I mean, like it seemed like it had its own tone and everything. I did
It
enjoy
definitely
it.
had the uniqueness of the 2010s in it too,
Mhm.
because
yes,
everybody
yeah.
knew that one misfit kid that was like, yeah, he reminds me of, Norman. He reminds me of his best friend, just and all the townspeople too. You're like, I can see so many people I know in this movie. It's kind of crazy, especially God. I can't think of his name, but he's the old creepy guy that was still guarding the tome, and everybody knew him as just like, oh, he's the local town nut.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
no, that
every town has that. Yeah.
but I think, what probably worked about that was it just felt very much like what we're familiar with. It's like something like Kubo. I think even for like Japanese people, they kind of aren't really as connected with that part of their history. Uh, Missing Link, that's a staunch period
Yeah,
film.
I didn't get to
Oh
see that
yeah,
one.
it was
That's on my list.
what was Missing Link? Yeah, I think I caught the tail end of that one. I didn't see the beginning.
I think Hugh Jackman's in it. If I'm
Yeah.
I think he's the voice of the hunter or the lead expeditionist, whoever it might be.
Right. Well, yeah, kind of like a Charles Darwin kind of guy where he's
Yeah.
trying to
that's cool.
prove something, and then he comes across the missing link, and it's like, oh wow, I found something even more interesting than what I was
Right.
looking for. But it's very much, I would say, as a movie, it's steeped very much in its trying to show off its production values, and they look great, but the story just doesn't really, chug along that
Right.
much.
Yeah.
That's where I feel like like Henry Selick really excels with like the art direction and the storytelling. It's like really creative in its own thing in its own world. Like especially Coraline.
Well, don't forget though, Neil Gaiman was also instrumental behind Coraline, as far as he wrote the children's book, and he also co-wrote the screenplay.
Yeah, I seen
Yeah.
I seen like some images of the storybook like just like online. I never had a chance to really get my hands on it, but I think they had like some liberties that are different from
Yeah.
the book, but not too many. I don't think, but it's definitely something I have to dive into.
But still, it's like, yeah, they had. I mean, that was just, I think, the best and the worst film they could have started out on, because it just set the bar so high.
Right.
With the amount of brain trust involved with that film.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Tim Burton's kind of had the same issue too. Not having Henry Selick no longer in the picture with him. So I think every Frankenweenie, Corpse Bride, Tim Burton made those himself.
Yeah.
He's billed as being the director,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, he is a good stop motion animator, but it's just the way Selick can get people to work together just wasn't there.
Yeah,
and
it was a good.
I agree with that. That is very true.
Good collaboration.
Well, it's also, it's very much like the same way as like Alfred Hitchcock. Alfred Hitchcock knew how to get talented people together.
Mm-hmm.
That's how he can make the movies he can make. And I think that's the same thing you could say about Henry Selick. He was just good at getting the right people to work for him, and get the results he wanted without having to boss people around.
Right.
Which Tim unfortunately has a reputation for doing that, and then he breaks down and locks himself in his room for 5 weeks, and then there goes the production, for a little brief time.
Right.
So
I have heard some stories about it. I have to dive in.
He's a very direct. He's as much a director as what a director is expected to be.
Right. Yeah.
He's on the Stanley Kubrick spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Where Stanley's the extreme. He's, what is it, 80 takes of the same performance.
Yeah, something crazy. Like especially for The Shining. That's why they're literally going insane making that movie. I guess it worked.
Well, I think that's what he wanted Shelley Duvall to do. Poor woman.
Yeah, really.
She definitely delivered. All things considered, but I definitely could not have imagined doing all of that back then.
Well, really brief, because we might as well one day do a Kubrick podcast or something.
Right.
But the one thing I couldn't believe was they told me that baseball bat sequence when she's going up the stairs, that each of those cuts were all from those different takes that he did. I
didn't know that.
Oh,
I thought that maybe it was he just got it right the 82nd time.
Wow.
But no, it was because just every little bit that he processed. The man was just so methodical.
Yeah.
The way he could just go through film and be like, that's the one I want for here, here,
Yeah,
here, and then got it together like that.
that's
And so that I was like, wow, that's a director.
yeah, it
As
really is.
crazy as it seemed,
That
it's like he to see that, and all that. Whereas other directors would just be like, oh my god, look at all this film we have. What are we gonna do with all this?
Right, right,
that's
right.
the puts the definition of method to madness. My
Mm,
goodness.
mm-hmm.
Well, I think Henry and Tim Burton can be like that, but Tim, obviously he works with live action, so he can afford to get away with that. Stop motion, if you're gonna be like that, it's just gonna drag out your production.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And the beauty of stop motion, you could control your actor exactly how you want them to be controlled. Like you could make them move as exuberantly as you want them to be, or as subtly as possible. It's all in the hands of the puppeteer, which is kind of nice.
Well, actually, there was something I forgot to mention when you asked me, how I started to get into stop motion.
Mm.
One of my biggest things I wanted to do was just to do film. I wanted to do live action.
Mm.
And for the longest time, I had a whole another group of ideas and stuff. Some were horror stories and whatnot. And it just went most of the times, all my friends, day jobs, some eventually started families, time gets limited. But the few times, we would get together and stuff, it was always tough, where what I don't, I guess what I do appreciate with what I do with stop motion is how much I can, as you said, control and do where, I'm talking to a guy who's just gotten off the clock and then he's, okay, here's the script, let's get this going. And it's just like,
Right.
that's a lot to get out of someone.
Yeah.
And then it's like, no, not like that. Look what it says in the script. Well, like how? It's so that before you know it, you have frustration and annoyance. And okay, let's all go get a couple beers, call it a night.
Yeah. With the
Well,
puppets, you don't have to feed them either. Like you don't have to feed your actors. They're
I don't know. I think Xance gets a little thirsty sometimes. Like you want a little bit? Here, you can have a little.
There you go. Yeah. No, there's a lot of variables with using live performers for sure. I mean, and there's variables for stop motion, so it's like, you pick your poison, you get benefits of both for sure.
Mhm.
I wanted to mention, I think it was episode 2 of Blue Sentai where it was the two characters. They're like, one of them was insinuating like maybe like something like a little more shady going on like on the ship, like basically like, oh, you're not doing anything weird with that alien. And then like I love that there's like a one detail where he like kind of just like pushes him away, like, yeah, you just get away from me. Like that little detail was really I really appreciated like that little sequence that you added like of the character, just like that little movement, really added a lot to the acting and the performance. And I was like, oh, there's a lot, there's a lot going on in this performance and the animation.
Well, with that though, I wish I had properly illustrated. I did create a short. It's in pieces right now. It needs to be further animated and assembled. But I wanted to actually illustrate. My original intention with Blue Sentai was to portray the sort of world that is being built, in this universe.
Mhm.
And I guess this would be a good time to really explain that because the way I looked at it is it's sort of like Batman the Animated Series where
Mm-hmm.
it's like the old world aesthetic continued on into the future.
Yeah, I like
And
that.
and so did the social and xenophobic attitudes of 1940s, 50s America.
Oh, okay.
And so
That makes
actually
sense.
with that scene, that was supposed to be very representative of how homophobic
Mm-hmm.
that society is.
Right.
But there are some characters within because the whole point of how people are getting into space is there's this mega corporation called Outer Spaceways Incorporated, and it's kind of like the Wayland Corporation,
Mhm.
and actually from Alien, where let's just throw colonists on a planet and whatever happens, happens.
Right. We'll get whatever
Yep.
materials we can.
And it's no coincidence that the owner of the corporation, his name is Head Whalen.
No.
So it's a reference to the
Yeah.
Whalen Corporation. But obviously not cyberpunk, but retro future sort of. I guess you could call it streamline Art Deco kind of world,
Yeah.
sort of that 1930s kind of aesthetic,
Mhm.
50s, 1930s, 50s. But long story short, it was to basically start the story out with our main character Hayata, who's basically the token Japanese person on this planet that's pretty much just straight up quote unquote Americans living on the planet.
Mhm.
And it's very much it's going with that whole anti-communism in order to implicate other people and create enemies and stuff like that. And you have the society where basically everybody's being oppressed by this corporation, but at the same time they're actually going to create a crisis, a fake nuclear war, to get everybody in the bomb shelters, and all the corporate leaders are just going to ditch the planet and go somewhere else and start
Oh,
brand new. And Hayata happens to actually catch wind of this, and that's how he ends up at Outer Spaceways Incorporated. So from the very beginning he becomes an enemy, but then when they actually send him on a mission that he knows he's going to get killed, they know they're going to send him on a planet where there's giant dinosaurs and monsters.
Mhm.
That's when Blue Sentai shows up, and they
Oh, wow.
resurrect him like Ultraman.
Ah.
The guy who becomes Ultraman gets killed, but then is brought back by Ultraman
Right.
to become fused with him. So that's what happens with Blue Sentai. They bring him back, except then they pair him with Zance, saying, "Welcome to Blue Sentai. Meet your new co-pilot. He's a little bit of a loose cannon."
Mm.
So after all this hair-raising stuff, now we have this massive scheme that's being taking place by this corporation, and now on top of that, and this is just going to get even crazier thinking about it. The head Whalens, who are in charge of Outer Spaceways Incorporated, have a long history of obsessions with Egyptian artifacts. And they actually are one of them is in contact with the god Anubis, and their plan is to free the god Set, the one that we typically think of as looking like the dog god. But I think he's supposed to be an aardvark, I believe, in the ancient Egyptian lore. And right now he's actually imprisoned in a supermassive black hole.
Oh, wow.
So
That's
yes, Osiris and all the other good gods of all the pantheons teamed up together and put him in a black hole. And the head Whalens are trying to free him, hoping, but it's going to be kind of like Prometheus. If you remember
Yeah.
Prometheus,
Oh,
but he was like, "Oh, we are the same. We are like gods." And then the engineer was like,
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I'm really looking forward to seeing that.
although it's going to be a funny evisceration.
Mhm.
It's not going to be an absolute death. It'll be a cartoon death. Nobody gets
Right.
hurt in cartoons.
Yeah. Like a balloon popping or something. Yeah.
So, but long story short, the whole story of Blue Sentai is basically Zance and Hayata up against the corporation and evil gods.
Oh, cool. I like that.
And one last thing, interesting bit of lore. I don't know if you all are familiar with the Mothman and Richard Keel.
I'm
I
more.
know
I'm
what
familiar
the
more with
Mothman
the
is, yeah.
lore of Mothman, but
Right.
not Richard Keel.
Yeah.
He was the researcher that went down to Point Pleasant in the 1960s and was looking into all the cases involving Mothman.
Mhm.
And at one point, he started to get phone calls from an individual who called himself Injured Cold. And one day, I guess he allegedly met Injured Cold, and so did a couple other people right around the same time. And what they described, they said almost was just a man with an impossibly wide grin. But he didn't speak. He just telepathically talked to you. You could hear his voice with a very soothing voice that would say, "Don't worry, I am from Lanulos. My name is Injured Cold. I'm here to study your species." and he's going to be one of the main villains in the story.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
that's a
so
cool
he's tied in. If you're familiar with like the Cthulhu mythos,
Mm-hmm.
he'll be the Nyarlathotep to Cthulhu.
Gotcha.
What the
Gotcha.
messenger of the god.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically when you see Indrid Cold, that means Set could be not far behind.
Right. Yeah, love
And so
crafting.
there will be a lot of that too.
Yeah.
We're gonna have possible cameos, possibly by I want to do a lot of the lesser known gods.
Mm.
I don't Cthulhu gets so much credit. All he
Right.
does is sleep.
Right.
All he
Right.
does is sleep and look like a plate of spaghetti.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I was like, what does Cthulhu do? I mean, people kill for him, they sacrifice for him, and all he does is take a long 3,000-year nap. I'm like, there's so many other gods we could talk about. I said maybe I'll try and play with that, but I'll probably have to use different names and stuff. Well, no, some of that might be coming out of copyright here soon. Actually, I think they're coming.
Oh, is it?
Lovecraft works?
Yeah, because he had a lot of stuff he wrote in the 20s
Mhm.
that should be out of copyright
I
up
know.
here pretty soon.
We talked
Wow.
about copyright law in previous episodes, and it's so convoluted with characters. Like we talk a lot about like Batman, Superman, like technically from the original copyright law, like those characters should be in the public domain by this point. But there's that Disney clause that keeps pushing that forward. Yeah.
Well, I think I've read that too. Like even like say like Mozart, for instance, should be out of copyright. But if you have a recording that was made by
Right.
a label that says, "Oh no, we recorded this in 1980 something,"
Right.
they can still say you're infringing on their right and stuff because they paid to have it recorded. So I guess I understand, but with Lovecraft, that's not going to be an issue,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah.
So that's just my hope, is to just have fun with it, and maybe even imbue some of those ideas of because I did kind of want to try and do the idea of something just so astronomically horrifying that it just breaks a person. I'm gonna do it for laughs though. It's gonna have an impact, but I promise it'll still be funny.
Yeah.
But just the idea of like you just can't go on living. It's like your world's been shaken because you've seen something so horrifying that it makes you question everything. And honestly, Hayata was nothing more than just a paper pusher. So he doesn't have the mind to think about existential things and stuff. It's not to say that he never did, but just not on that kind of scale. But that's also too, I'm going to talk a lot about the universe in that sense. One of my big things I'm always going to bring up are the scale of black holes. The idea that they allege that some of them are just so, I forgot, they said the largest one you could fit 3 galaxies.
Holy shit.
Jesus
I didn't
Christ.
realize that. Wow.
And just the idea of that, to me, it's like, I just want to, it'll be fun, but we're going to still just put those little seeds, where it's like, yeah, whenever you're haughty and you think you're bigger than Swiss cheese or sliced bread, it's like, just think about that.
Yeah, that's mind blowing for sure. I never
would have thought about that.
Theory though, because we've yet to go there.
Yeah, no, really.
Yeah.
It might suck the whole
I'd say we'd be there about another 200 years.
Oh,
no, I don't want to be in there. I don't want to get stuck in that.
Well, actually, I think they say the bigger, the less chance of things going in. Actually, because it's like a someone that's full. They've had their fill, and so they're pretty much just staying there. But they say potentially as an energy source that would be. Oh, I mean, it'd be crazy to think of what you could hew out of something like that.
Yeah,
but
that would sustain or
that even be possible.
Really? Yeah, it's definitely something that I can't fathom in my brain.
Maybe if we hit the cyberpunk era of the future.
Or maybe.
Well, you know what I still think about to this very day? About 150 some years ago, we literally had teapots on wheels pulling
Mhm.
trains across this country.
Right.
And then to think where we're at now, it's like it kind of makes me wonder, maybe in 200 years, who knows?
Really? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and technology is just like ever evolving faster and faster. Like, one thing kind of comes up after another. So it's like, what happens in one year, like would have taken us like, a decade in the past or something. So it's like, it just
Mhm.
seems like it keeps going quicker and quicker, like how we're developing that way. Um, yeah, it's
Especially with AI becoming a very real thing,
mm,
cloning androids, not androids, I'm sorry, but robots, even people having cybernetic enhancements, like we're still in that era of, amputees and, mechanical appendages, but soon we might be where people, oh, you have an arm missing, let's just attach a, fully functional robotic arm. So nothing, it's like you're not ever disabled.
I mean, yeah, that to me, it probably could be sooner than later that we'll start to see, real bionic people. You know,
Mhm.
yeah,
it, even I unfortunately hate to admit I have a very dirty vice tobacco, where it's like they could give me a real iron lung one day where they'll be like, keep on smoking. Go right on ahead. It's like, well, we'll give you the straight thing, to where you don't ever have to worry again about your things
right.
getting damaged.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
It's
a
like that.
real possibility, and they're Elon Musk is talking about putting microchips in people's brains. I'm like, I don't know if I feel about that one, but sure.
I think
That'll be like
Futurama did that
the
first,
villains
Elon
in my
Musk.
short in my series coming to life.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, for sure. And so since we're talking about like all this, outside information, I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts about Congress speaking about like UFOs and like this
Hmm.
alien, the alien mummy in Peru? I think they found it. Like, what
I
are you
know it was South America. I don't know if it was
Yeah,
Peru.
I think it was Peru, from my recollection, but
All right, I wish I knew more about that one. I
it's like the thing that looks like almost like a paper mache, like, um,
Kind of husk
tiny,
thing.
tiny, like, little alien looking thing. I guess they're doing, like, X-rays on it
oh,
and everything.
what was that the one that Steve Greer was spearheading the investigation on?
I
I
think
think
so,
it was,
yeah, I
yes.
think it was that, yep.
Um, yeah, I think that came as inconclusive,
Mhm.
and that means it could have been fabricated,
Right,
and
yeah,
it,
there's
it,
no
it
answer.
could not. It might be real. Big might.
Hmm.
I'm gonna make a horrible confession. I am very into UFO lore, but I'm not sure I really entirely buy all the allegations.
Right, yeah, no,
Like
have that
I
same mindset.
Yeah.
and I think what Congress is basically saying right now, like the famous video of the guy off the USS Nimitz that caught that rotating UFO,
Mhm.
that's a genuine article. We really don't know what that is. And something like Roswell, for instance, it's like they were gonna say it was a flying saucer because they did not want to admit it was Project Mogul.
Mm,
They didn't want to admit that we were creating not weather balloons, spy balloons, to spy on the Russians and stuff like that. They were gonna lap up the UFO conspiracy, and so like stuff like that. I'm very certain that it's like the government, the U.S. Air Force, I should say, was willing to play up that image for the sake of just trying to keep attention away from the
right,
bases at Los Alamos, Groom Lake testing facility, otherwise known as Area 51. Which I say the scariest thing about Area 51 is that it's actually not government property. It's privately owned, and that's why they can shoot you if you get near
oh,
the
I didn't
fence.
know that, okay.
I didn't know that.
Yes, Lockheed Martin owns Area 51.
Hmm.
And that is a fact. I mean, but people are like, well, how come the guys in the camo are say they're going to shoot us? Aren't they soldiers? No, they're not soldiers. They're private guards. And just like at a mansion or anywhere, any privately run facility, they are, if the person pays them to kill, they're actually protected by law, saying private property clause.
Wow.
And so that's the scariest thing about Area 51, where it's like, what really are they doing with our tax dollars? Because that money is going
Yeah, no, they're
there
definitely doing
at the end of the
something.
day.
It's like I
Mhm.
don't know if it's aliens, but obviously it's something they're keeping secret from the public. So it's like, that's why.
I mean, I think it is just aircraft
Mhm.
development, and we're jaded from the atomic bomb testing. We when the Russian spies got in, we're just like, we're never again. That's how we became after that.
Right.
That's why we're so
Yeah.
close about that. But I think the Air Force wanted the UFO thing to be the forefront on people's minds, where it's like, oh yeah, you didn't see a U-2 spy bomber, you saw a little booger from Mars.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's easier to put blame on something that doesn't exist or, could exist, but you know.
And abductions for me, I'm not sure. I can't say the definite no, but the one I'll always say to this very day, where I'll say this is an absolute unknown, is Betty and Barney Hill, in the
Oh yeah.
1960s, where
Yeah.
it's like
I think I've heard
there
about
was no reason those two would have made that story up. Especially given the social tensions at that time. An interracial couple bringing attention to themselves like
Mhm.
that. That to me seems, that would be to me the point where I'm like, okay, this one, it's going to be a big question mark. But someone also brought up the idea it could have been a government abduction, and then they hypnotized them into thinking that they got abducted by aliens, because you never
That
know.
they could have
it. Yeah.
uncovered something that they
They
don't
could
want.
have seen something they weren't supposed
Yeah.
to.
Or just the fact that it was a white woman and an African American man who were married.
Yeah, just like I don't know, playing scientists. I don't know. There's a lot of theories to it, and like I have heard about that incident, and like that was the one that has the most interest. Like, oh, this there's definitely something behind it because, like you said, just all the social implications.
But the other thing, though, too, was the fact that Betty actually drew out a star map of it's a cluster of stars that is called the Zeta Reticuli star system,
Mhm.
and they discovered it years later and looked back at her drawing and said, "Oh my God, look at these two! They literally they match perfectly." And so they were like, "Okay," and that's how some people call the gray aliens reticulans.
Mm,
And so they're saying that they were from the Zeti Reticuli, because
wow.
Betty and Barney Hill were the first ones to say big, V-shaped faces, black.
Mhm.
Well, it wasn't black eyes. I believe they did say they had pupils.
Mm.
I don't remember who was it that started the black almond eye thing, but actually, funny enough, Xant's actually is a reticulan. Oh,
Oh, there he
he,
is.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
and he would be closer to what Betty and Barney Hill probably saw.
Mhm.
So, the chances are Xant's could have been asking for a cup of
Yeah.
sugar, and then they were just, too shocked to give him an answer.
That's amazing.
Although actually, by the timelines, he wasn't. Xant's was created. He wasn't born. He was created. His father, Zeke, was an actual gray alien. So he
Oh,
might
that's
have.
cool. Okay.
Oh, what am I saying? You know what, guys? Look what I got right here.
Oh shit! Oh,
Oh,
there he is. Wow.
That's a
Okay,
doctor.
that's really cool.
that's freaky.
I like watching your animated films. Like I never realized how big your puppets are until like
Oh,
you brought them out.
well, that's just because of my stubby fingers. I gotta make them a little big.
No, that's cool. I like how big they are.
Yeah, that's
Take
a
me, dear leader.
So I wanted to ask. This is probably one of my last questions that I have for you for for your puppets, like versus like making a human puppet versus like making a dinosaur puppet. Like, is there one that's easier to animate or easier to create.
Well, like for this, uh, dinosaur right here, he's on all fours, and so no need for rigging.
Right.
I don't have to put anything. I could tie him down a little bit. Yeah, if you're familiar with that process, where you put like nuts and bolts at the bottom of the feet.
Oh, yes. I seen that
Yeah.
with I think Willis O'Brien stuff. He would do that.
And that's like when you're doing like a high walk or something like a transitioning to a jump, though that's very instrumental to have. But still just like a general dino, just kind of walking along, looking for something to eat. It's easy to do it on all fours and be able to and I got two dachshunds, wiener dogs that I study and watch their movements, and so I try to
Oh,
world
that's
movement.
nice.
Yeah.
That's a good way to incorporate it.
Dachshunds are very instrumental to movie history. Actually, it was George Lucas, I believe, the Rancor in Return of the Jedi. Its roar was a slowed down dachshund bark.
What?
No
my
way.
gosh! I gotta listen. I gotta find that. That's
I have
amazing.
to find that.
That almost breaks my brain because like the Rancor roar is like cemented in my subconscious. So like I hear it in my head right now, but like
it's a genuinely frightening roar.
Yeah, it really is.
But my little girl dog Beelzebub, she'll actually do sort of like a kind of, So if you were to slow that down, that'd probably like.
That's so cool. Now I gotta play in slow motion. I gotta find the scene on YouTube. I think there's like a playback where you could do it like slow motion, I think, or sped up.
They did stuff like that. Well, and you know what? Credit where credit's due. I said George Lucas. That would have been Phil Tippett, who was in charge of that. But he was good at doing a lot of mundane sounds. And actually, with Empire Strikes Back 2, I believe they said with the AT-AT walkers, when their legs lifted up and made the zzz, that was the garbage truck.
Oh, okay.
I can hear that. That makes sense.
Yeah, I like
so
that.
It's like he probably just woke up one morning and said, "Oh, geez, I need to get the garbage guy next time so I could catch a sound effect of this will sound right."
Yeah, Phil Tippett's a Phil Tippett's.
I think my house is haunted.
It might be the Rancor just shaking it down.
Nah. I think some figures fell over or something.
Hopefully nothing's hurt in the fall.
No, well, I see all the Hot Toys are there, so no, they're good.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So, Jerry, do you have any questions you want to ask?
No, you really asked all the questions I had, and I managed to get in. And of course, as we talk, we answer questions. We'll say comments. That'll turn into a future question. So Blue Sentai Productions has definitely answered all my questions and then some. It's been a really eye-opening experience, learning more about claymation.
Yeah,
I would say the top of the iceberg knowledge, but this got me, I'd say about 10%, lower on that hill.
Yeah,
that's humbling to hear. I mean, I could think of at least 10 people who probably are better than me, but I guess, it's one of those things where, what, the one thing I meant to say from the very get-go was I didn't see myself as being a claymation animator. Fun and interesting thing. I'll try to keep this brief because I could see the time here, but there actually is a mild pushback in the stop motion community against claymation. And it just has to do with the fact that it's perceived as being tied with juvenile media. And so it's not taken seriously. Even though you got stuff like Wallace and Gromit and all that, that's clearly celebrated.
Yeah.
But there are people who are just like, I don't do claymation, like they get very mad. Almost like it's the equivalent of like when you get someone that's very technical about certain things and you say the wrong thing and then they, that's not what it is, it's like they get like that about. And so there is kind of a mild aversion in the stop motion community to claymation.
That being said, I almost do understand it just because, everyone who just sees stop motion always just says, "Oh, that's claymation." And then, like, the person who's doing the puppetry with stop motion and with the armature is just like, "Well, no, it's not made out of clay, so it's not claymation." So
Well,
I understand that aspect.
well, when I saw King Kong as a kid, that my dad said that he's like, "This is claymation,"
Right.
and I remember thinking, I'm like, then why does it look like he has fur? I
Right.
was like,
Yeah.
that doesn't
Yeah.
look like clay,
Yeah.
and over time, I found out the truth, but and for a little bit, when I was in high school, I used to be one of those where people would say, "Oh, The Nightmare Before Christmas is a great claymation film," and I'd say,
Right.
"It's not claymation. No, it's stop motion."
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
oh,
Exactly.
well, that's not as fun to say.
Yeah.
And
No, I understand why people like to say claymation, but I understand because even I get kind of annoyed, and
Yeah, I still
I don't
also
even
get
do the anime. I don't
confused.
even do stop motion. I get annoyed when I'm talking to someone like, "Oh yeah, that's claymation." I'm like, no, it's not.
but one could argue that it actually is a term that belongs to the person who coined
Mhm.
it, and that'd be Will Vinton.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, you could say he was a real claymation animator in that
Oh,
sense. That
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think
Easily.
as long as if whatever the artist, I guess, claims that they're making, whatever, it's fine. Either
But
way.
no, I mean, well, I mean, Ray Harryhausen had Dynamation,
Yeah,
and
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Phil Tippett had what he called Go
Go
Motion.
motion. Yeah. With motion blur. He was like the pioneer
Yeah,
of motion blur and stop motion. Yeah,
really quick. I
it's a
saw RoboCop 2 the other day, and I thought, you know what? I think the animation was just getting better.
yeah.
Where it was just like, why did they just? I know the whole story with Jurassic Park and how
Yep.
he got that. He became the dinosaur supervisor, and all
Mhm.
that. And apologies for stiffing the stop motion, but at the same time, it's like it was getting better,
It definitely
better.
was, especially with the go motion technique with the motion blur and like, I almost want to see the version of Jurassic Park with the stop motion. Like I wish that like existed as well. Like I could watch that version if I wanted
Well,
Yeah.
I'll look back on that film a lot,
Mm,
and I do think the story, the performances really carry the film, the most.
mhm.
But when it comes to the special effects, it belongs to the animatronics.
Oh yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
easily.
It's definitely
You
Without
know,
a doubt.
the CG looks the best when it's dark and it's
Mhm.
rainy.
Yeah, like the
Just like
shooting.
Godzilla 1998, when
Mhm.
it's dark and it's
Mhm.
rainy, looks
Right.
fine. When it's sunny, looks rubbery and
Mhm.
weird.
Yeah,
You
I can
know,
understand that. I mean, I think that the special like the CGI holds up today with the Jurassic Park. With the first one at least, I think it really holds up. Like even some of the new Jurassic World movies, I almost feel like they just took more time into every frame for that movie versus like, Jurassic World whatever.
t- t- I have yet. There's a part of me that, and I don't want to get opinionated because I don't want to alienate fans or anything like that. Yeah, everyone's allowed to like what they want to like. When I was 9 years old, I liked Wild Wild West, and everybody hated it.
Mm.
So
Right, right. That's
it's
okay.
okay to like what you
There's
want
a
to
big
like, but
spider in it, that's kinda cool.
there's a part of me where it's like I look at that and it's like, I don't know. I'm just
Mm,
like that. Is this how far we're getting with CGI? This
I
doesn't
I
feel
do
like.
agree with that.
Yeah. I feel like CGI is at a weird, like, topped off cap right now. Like, it's getting better for certain things, but other things, it looks really bad. And
Well,
there's
you
no
think
kind of middle ground.
Yeah.
you feel like an artist is paid more time to worry about how realistic the follicles on a head of hair looks than
Yes.
the actual action and
Right.
motion.
I have
Yeah,
said
the
that
acting.
exact thing myself. I said, you can see the freaking strands of their hair better than the freaking CGI looks. Why? For what?
Yeah.
I know. I mean, it's like I think it, and I hate to say it, with some of the Avengers films, I'm just sitting there and I'm just like, oh my God, what's going on here? I'm like, shaking my eyes and stuff like that because it just looks like a bunch of people going like this half the time, and it's just like,
Yeah.
oh,
I have said that in the past too, like, well, like movies, some that are too reliant on CGI, it's like almost overstimulating. There's too much
Yeah.
going on. There's too many explosions. Like, what character am I supposed to follow? What's going on? And like, back in, even Jurassic Park was a great example. Like, they weren't just relying on CGI. There's CGI. There was, um, you know, animatronics as well. Like, they're like merging these two mediums, and it was like a magic trick, like they're like using different mediums to just like make it continue on.
I'm very sorry. I have to attend to something. Can it take like about a minute tops?
Yeah,
Two
that's
minutes?
fine. Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
I think it's regarding the dogs.
okay. No problem.
Yeah, yeah, the evil dachshunds.
The Rancor is coming out. Well, I guess just to continue on my point, like there's so many different ways, like Jurassic Park really you know, just like close the seams, it wasn't just like, oh, it's just everything CGI. There's like a lot more going on. And that's what's missing from movies today. It's too reliant on CGI.
They
The
don't put the love and care in it.
No, they don't put the love and care in it at all. Like, they could make great CGI today, but like they don't give the animators enough time to really work on something. It's always on crunch time, so that's why we get things like The Flash, which looks terrible.
Yeah.
And and that movie's
I'll say
budget
we
was
also have
astronomical.
scenes in the new Beyond the Spider-Verse that fall in that same category. You
Mhm.
can tell like, oh, this was definitely done maybe 96 hours before movie was supposed to
I
release.
thought Into the Spider-Verse looked good, the new one, like Across
Yeah,
the Spider-Verse.
it was a couple of scenes I noticed. I'm
Mhm.
like, yeah, they definitely like you can like if you rewatch it because I've everybody's uploading clips of it at this point, and it was a couple of the clips I wanted to double check to make sure I wasn't just imagining it.
Right.
But it was a lot of the CGI clips were just like, yeah, they definitely put as much to go in here as the bare minimum would require.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know, like, what's that movie? The Life of Pi. I think like, that was, like, the last
Oh
movie
yeah.
I could think of, like, in recent time where the CGI actually blew my mind. I was like, "Wow, this looks like a real tiger, or like a real orangutan and everything going on."
Yeah, they
Um,
did do really good on that. I agree.
yeah, but, like, there's a documentary, I still have to watch it. It's on YouTube. It's, like, basically how the Life of Pi animators got screwed over. Like, they won an Oscar, and they, like, basically kicked them off stage, and it was super crunch time, and, you know, they I think their studio went bankrupt.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah, that made the animation for that. That was gonna be one of my choices at some point. Just the blow reveal too much was gonna be, The Life of Pi and that, but yeah, it's, the Rancor back in its cell. It's
I, I think he must have drank a whole bowl of water, and so he needed to go out.
Oh, I gotcha,
Oh,
no worries.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I could hear him crying, and I was like, "Oh
oh,
boy, he
poor
needs to
boy.
go, or
Yeah,
else that's an
no, he
Yeah,
accident
we
in the
can
house."
go
definitely got
ahead and wrap up. So, we
yeah.
don't
Yeah,
take
no,
up too much more of your time. We
Mhm.
appreciate everything you've given us.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Francisco. And if you ever want to come back on, you're more than welcome. There's times where, we just talk about movies. So if there's ever a
oh,
movie you just want to throw at us, like it could be something very obscure or something everyone has seen, it doesn't really matter. Feel free to throw it our way. We'll definitely love to have that discussion for sure.
well, hey, we were having a little bit of fun about The Shining, so maybe
Yeah,
we should revisit that one day,
that would
because
that would be a good
That'd
one.
be nice.
I haven't
yeah,
seen that one in a bit. It's been a
Yeah,
hot
it's
minute
been
for
a
sure.
very long time for me.
Yeah.
well, what's well, having not to keep things going too long, but and have you seen the 1990s TV miniseries that Stephen King
I've
produced?
seen bits of it. I know it's, like, pretty bad, but that's all I really know.
Well, it's kind of like Moby Dick,
Mm,
you know, Moby Dick should not be adapted as a movie word for
Right.
word from the book.
Yeah. Didn't they
You
they
know,
made a 50s movie, right? Didn't Moby
right.
Yep.
And actually, funny story, I got in really big trouble with my literature teacher, American Lit teacher in college, because he did these stupid little quizzes that he would do, asking questions about what happened in what chapter. And I watched the movie thinking I was going to be slick, going like,
Mm,
oh, well, I'm about to get the whole gist of this movie,
right.
forgetting that the whole story is about a suicidal teacher that,
Mhm.
hates American society, hates himself, and wants to go to sea to die, basically. And it's
Right.
like, I missed all that part because the movie just starts with Ishmael meeting Queequeg. Hey, we're going on the ship. Here's Captain Ahab, white whale,
Yeah, yeah.
It
Cut out
literally
a lot of
took about maybe 30% of the book and made it into a movie.
right, and
And
that's
so,
a hard book to adapt because there's so much, Old English to it, and, like, it's almost like a sonnet, like an English sonnet, like a Shakespearean, like,
well,
language almost.
I would probably disagree with that statement to say that it just doesn't know what it's trying to actually be. There's a reason it was not popular when it came out,
Mm.
because it starts out as a narrative and then it turns into a biology lesson all of a
Right,
sudden,
yeah, there's biology lesson on, like, all the whales. Yeah.
history lesson, a
Mhm.
technical lesson,
Right.
industrial age,
Yeah.
schematics. And
Yeah,
it just,
yeah.
it's like,
They
wait a
talk
sec,
about the Erie Canal for, like, a chapter, and you're like, "Where am I in the narrative?"
I
What
thought
am
we
I
were going after
reading?
the big whale.
Mm,
He gate the guy's leg. Or he wants revenge. What's going on? And the Gregory Peck version is very much steeped in that.
mhm,
Or even the version with Patrick Stewart as Captain Ahab
right.
pretty much abridges a lot of the stuff from the book, where it's like it's about the mad captain who wants his whale. So same with The Shining. The Shining as a book is the sad story of the frustrated writer, the man with anxiety about his job, his life. Is he happy in his marriage to his doting wife and his creepy kid, with his little powers and stuff like that? And the movie just went ahead and just said, Stanley Kubrick's version was like, no, Jack's just weird. He's unhinged right from the get go, and
Right.
his kid's
Yeah.
weird. His wife's a little just not with it, and here they are, spooky hotel, the end. Whereas Stephen King's story is just a massive character study of what I guess was supposed to be uh, explaining American society at that time, the sort of deconstruction of the classic family unit and
Mhm.
alcoholism and all that stuff that went along with it. And making Jack a sympathetic character versus the crazy guy that's just typing all work and no play.
Yeah. I do like more the idea of Jack, like, starting out as, like, a normal guy and then becoming crazy. I mean, he starts out as, like, he's already Jack Nicholson, so, like, he's already unhinged,
He's
So
already right there.
right. Yeah,
Don't
no,
worry,
that'll be
guys, I'll be fine.
yeah, exactly. Like, he's already kind of
You can
crazy.
trust me.
Exactly.
No, a guy killed his two twin daughters and his wife, and it doesn't bother me one
Yeah.
single
Oh, yeah.
bit.
He's already a little bit off his rocker. You just need a little more of a shove.
Well, not to mention the good old bartender too. Kill your family. Why?
Mm,
They'll be happier as ghosts.
exactly. Well, yeah, this was a great time, Francisco. Thank you for coming
Right, right.
so we're just gonna wrap up. Our we just got our few little sayings, and then that should be the episode.
You want
Um,
to do yours first, Josh?
sure, sure. Okay.
Do you have your lines, Mr. Francisco?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So 3, 2, 1. This is Josh from BatYard's Production, sending you off up, and away until next BatYard's finest episode.
This is Jerry guiding you all with Green Lantern's light.
And this is Francisco becoming super friends one episode at a time.
Awesome. Thank you
Awesome.
so much.
Thank you so much. This was
Yeah.
really
No, thank
informative.
you.
Thank you.
This was a treat. Definitely, like I said, like, you're more than welcome to come back on anytime. And like I said, if you want to throw a movie at us, it could be, anything. We'll definitely be interested in that too.
Well, we'll definitely keep in touch for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Well,